What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm joined always by my man, Jacob Punturi. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talker. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Every time there's one answer, there seems to be another. We float every idea out there, and well, this time it's an idea that I think we tried to ignore, say wasn't going to happen, not very likely, still may not be very likely, but it's one that the Pittsburgh Steelers are interested in. We're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers phone calls to the New Orleans Saints about a possible wide receiver trade. We'll dive into that and what it means for the Steelers and the possibility at wide receiver. Meanwhile, Ryan Clark's got some words from Mike Tomlin that are by and far hilarious, just to kind of toss it right out there. Plus, we'll dive into much more here on a beautiful one in the city of Pittsburgh. I won't lie to you, just found my wedding ring as I'm sitting here. I look over and it's on top of my little post-it notes. Been looking for that for 48 hours now. Been looking for that wedding ring. I have not said a word to my wife, who's definitely watching this, and we'll find out then. But you know, it's all good. How you feeling, my friend? Hopefully as good as I am right now.
I'm probably not as elated as you are to have just found my wedding ring, thankfully. And as soon as you said that, I checked mine instinctively. I have mine on. I have mine on, Tori.
That's good.
But yeah, I'm feeling good. Happy Friday, man. I think it's gonna be a nice weekend shaping up here.
I think it is as well. You got a couple of big things. Obviously, the Pittsburgh Pirates are in Philadelphia, which is fun. The Juan Soto returns to New York to take on the Yankees tonight, which is a good time. Aaron Rodgers still hasn't signed, and we all get to talk and hang out and listen to that. And now, well, there's a potential wide receiver trade floating around there that maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers are interested in. We have talked Romeo Doubs, potentially Allen Lazard. Some have brought up Brandon Ayuk for another go round here ever since George Pickens got traded. And there's been back and forth constantly about if the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to replace George Pickens, if they're going to give this the same go round that they went last year when they tried to get Brandon Ayuk. And if it doesn't work out, are they comfortable going into the season with Robert Woods, Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson as their essential number 2 package next to DK Metcalf, much like they did last year with Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson as their number 2 package next to George Pickens? We have come up with as many realistic options as humanly possible. We have explained which ones can be real and which ones we expect not to be real. And Chris Olave's name has been floated out many, many times, but I think we have shut it down every single time. That is until today when 93.7 The Fans, Adam Crawley, tweeted out just a simple, got a text from somebody who's going to know, apparently. That text said, Chris Olave. That was it. Then, good old Nick Fairbach of Penn Live confirmed that the Pittsburgh Steelers have certainly called the New Orleans Saints looking for a wide receiver trade, or at least doing their due diligence here, saying, quote, in addition, sources tell Penn Live that New Orleans does not seem interested in trading Olave as of this morning. Nothing is close on a trade. However, I believe Tomlin, I apologize, that was the wrong one. Sources tell Penn Live that Steelers have called the Saints to check on Olave's availability. The Steelers are interested in the 24-year-old, but sources describe that call as due diligence. Due diligence on a 24-year-old wide receiver coming off 2,000-yard receiving seasons. Injuries last year that, derailed just about everything, but a strong start with questionable offensive weapons around him. Really no solid head coach throughout his entire time in New Orleans. The Saints are at a place where Derek Carr retires, Tyler Shuck's there, but nobody really knows if he's the answer. Is he going to be the answer? The Pittsburgh Steelers are a team that they don't know if they have the answer either, but they probably have Aaron Rodgers, which is an upgrade over Tyler Shuck, you'd have to imagine. Definitely an upgrade over Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler becomes the name to watch. Chris Olave, I mean, he's a guy that's entering the last year of his deal, is 24 years old, the same age that George Pickens was when the Steelers traded him. And, well, Olave went in the first round where George went in the second because, well, probably just as good of a player. Difference is that less character concerns. You look at Chris Olave, you look at Chris Olave's name, you look at the reports from Nick Fairbaugh and Adam Crawley, excuse me. Possibility? Are we beginning to heat up on the, okay, Pittsburgh Steelers have some interest on Chris Olave, and that is definitely something to keep an eye on? Or are you throwing immediate cold water on this bad boy and saying it ain't going to happen? We're getting our hopes up.
I am tossing a nice bucket of cold water onto this. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I would love to add Chris Olave. I feel like of the two of us, I've probably been a little bit more optimistic about the Steelers' interest in him and potentially trying to get him. So I would love for them to be pursuing him for the right price. It doesn't seem likely. I do find the term due diligence to be a little right word, maybe not to describe the actions going on.
Yes.
But that being said, yeah, I don't think there's going to be anything major progressing with these talks. I expect them to kind of die down with the remaining time in the offseason here.
Look, I hope you're wrong. I have a feeling that things are just at the beginning of this, but it shows me a couple of things. Okay. For one, it tells me that the Pittsburgh Steelers are interested in a wide receiver, that, you know, they're not, everybody's kind of immediately jumping to, well, Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, and they like what they have in house. They probably do like what they have in house, but they also liked George Pickens and they traded him. This is what they do. You know, they're going to say all the right things. They're going to keep confidence in their guys, but they're going to constantly make phone calls and have conversations and see if things can change and if they can find, quote unquote, their guy. And their guy right now might be Chris Olave. I think Chris Olave is the best name you could go get without question. If you could go get a guy where you get a 5th-year option, so you get 2 years of Chris Olave, then you got to sign him to a long-term deal. You don't know what the future holds, but if at 26 years old, the dude is a stud and wide receivers at that time, if Jamar Chase this year is getting paid $40 million a year, in 2 years, that means most guys are getting paid close to $40 million a year. Chris Olave, $40 million a year, maybe. $32 million a year, maybe. At that point, you got 2 wide receivers. That's a steal. No quarterback under contract, which is massive. I just think it works out if that's the way the Steelers want to approach it. There are differences, you know, there are differences in approaching a Romeo Doubs or going after a Christian Watson or calling about an Alan Lazard and saying, this is a guy that fits this now. Maybe he fits it long-term, but maybe he doesn't fit it long-term. And then a Chris Olave where you're essentially saying, we wanted to keep DK and George. We didn't because of George. Chris might be the replacement to George Pickens. And that's the best outcome for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You have money, spend the money. You know what I mean? Go spend it on playmakers. You built your offensive line through the NFL draft. You got your starting running backs in Jaylen Warren and Caleb Johnson. You have your tight end crew. You have your wide receiver 1, and you have your depth wide receivers in Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, and Robert Woods. You need a wide receiver 2. Go spend the money on a wide receiver 2. You don't have to worry about the massive contract for 2 seasons. At that point, maybe Minka's gone. Maybe Cam Hayward's gone. Maybe Alex Highsmith's at the end of his deal, and you're talking about that. Maybe DK's 2 years into his deal, and you're looking to move up. There's so many things. The possibilities are endless. I think Chris Olave makes way too much sense for the Steelers. Do I think that it's a realistic possibility? I mean, I don't know. Like, we sit here today, what would you give up for a Chris Olave? Well, if you're the Steelers, what are you willing to give up for a guy who's 20? He's going to be 25 years old, and by the start of the season, again, coming off of an injury, 5th-year option picked up, and has 2,000-yard receiving seasons in 3 years.
My initial question regarding this whole topic is, could the Steelers conceivably go out and make a deal for a wide receiver that exceeds what they got in return for George Pickens? And at first I thought they can't do that, right? If they could only get a 3rd and a later round pick swap for George Pickens, the most that they could then go spend on a wide receiver to replace him in the number 2 position would be, a third round pick and a late round pick swap. But then the key factor in making me change my mind here is that extra year, the 5th year option. And I think at that point, I would be willing to give up a second rounder. I know we just did it for DK Metcalf, and you can easily make the argument, well, are you, is that the same sort of value? Did you give up a little too much? I think you maybe have already put yourself in a situation where you have to give up a little bit more than you would want to because you don't have the leverage to get the actual player that is the best fit. So if Olave is absolutely the Steelers' top to bottom management, Tomlin are all super gung-ho on him, then I think a second round pick, maybe, you swap some picks in the 7th, 6th, that, sure. But yeah, I would be willing to go there. Because again, you have the cap space to do it. I think this would be the time to go after that player, but it has to be like the actual right player. I don't just want Mike Williams coming in and overspending for that, or even just a quality wide receiver at that point.
Yeah.
You can't overspend. It has to be someone who is like a good fit for years to come as well.
I agree. Like you have the possibility right now to say this is how the Steelers should be thinking in my eyes. This is my opinion. I'm sure if I laid this one out for Omar, he'd agree 100%, no questions asked. And Mike Tomlin too. They tell me, genius, you want to run the Pittsburgh Steelers starting right now? I'd say, yeah, no doubt about it, pal. Pretty much been doing it. You guys just haven't been listening to the pod. If I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, I create the package that I'm willing to give up for next year to go get a quarterback. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm saying, all right, we're willing to give up a 1st round pick, a 3rd round pick, the 1st after that, and maybe a 2nd, 3rd if need be, and then a bunch of little guys. That's what we're willing to give up to go get our quarterback. That's what the Steelers should be doing first, because you need a quarterback. You can't. The Steelers' priority 1 from now until they have one is to get a franchise quarterback, and it should not change whatsoever. Once you have that package down, then you start to evaluate what you could do with the rest of it, because the Steelers are in a place where they don't need a bunch of flaws or a bunch of holes filled. They have a good roster. They have a roster built right now where they could plug guys in and fill other draft picks, but also free agency and those kinds of things where you're not taking massive risks. You're not band-aiding major holes anymore. You've done those things. You've put the time and the effort into them. Okay. Are we willing? Does the quarterback package plus the minor tweaks we're going to have to make in 2026 add up to us still being able to give up a 2nd round pick to the Saints for Chris Olave? Can we give them a 3rd and a 5th and still make it work? Whatever that package is, but that's how I'm looking at it, is if the Pittsburgh Steelers want a quarterback, go get that quarterback in a year, and then everything else you have, everything else you expect to have, you could do to put everything else in place. And if that means going to get a wide receiver right now, and that wide receiver is Chris Olave, and it costs a 2nd round pick, that means go get Chris Olave for a 2nd round pick. At the same time, though, what do you think the Saints are on? Like, the Saints apparently want something ridiculous. You can only imagine. Do they want a 1st for Chris Olave? And do you budge? Like, if you're the Saints, at some point, you got to be sitting here thinking, all right, guys, let's just sit down and be real realistic about the situation. Mm-hmm. Our quarterback's 45 and a rookie, okay? The guy who was supposed to be playing quarterback didn't want to play quarterback, said his elbow or his shoulder hurt, took a page right out of the Deshaun Watson, I tore my Achilles 15 times notebook to say, I'm done, guys. This isn't going to happen this year. Probably not a Super Bowl contender. Could probably use picks to stack up for the future. If that's the case, maybe, just maybe, they're willing to give up a guy like Chris Olave to a team that's a little bit closer. What's the price in your eyes from the Saints? Like, what are the Saints telling the Steelers that they got to give up for Chris Olave?
A lot. And right now the Saints hold all of the leverage in any of these potential conversations. So I think that they would be holding out for a 1st round pick right now. They have essentially 2.5 years to get some sort of return or figure out a contract for Chris Olave. That, doesn't really bode well for the Steelers being like, here's a 3rd and a 5th. So I think it puts the Saints in this position of being like, well, you can either wow us with an offer, and if I were the Saints, if I were the GM for the Saints, if I could get a first round pick and maybe some sort of swap or anything else that might help the organization for Chris Olave, I would be very inclined to take that deal. And I think for right now, for the next couple of months, maybe once, the season starts and the schedule starts shaking out differently, if the Saints are losers, it changes the leverage they might have. But for now, I'm saying you got to blow me away with the package to get him off the Saints.
See, that stinks for the Steelers, man, because I think that it just makes too much sense. I'll say, my thoughts on the Chris Olave situation is it works out so well for Pittsburgh. If they can do it, I support it. I have no issues with the Chris Olave consideration, due diligence, phone call, whatever you want to call it. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers made the right move. They're making the right move by looking at Chris Olave and saying, this is the guy we should be going after. This is the guy that, makes us a better team, makes us contender worthy if we get the right quarterback, sets our quarterback up a year from now to win. I mean, that's what you've essentially done. That's what they would be doing, is saying George Pickens was great, man, and whoever comes in next year to be our quarterback would have had a great 1-2 punch, but would have had a great 1-2 punch that they would have had to babysat at least one of those guys. You don't have to do that with Chris Olave. And I think that changes everything in the terms of wide receivers and who you would get for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Where does he rank on realistically ending up in Pittsburgh this season compared to the Romeo Dobbs and the Wicks and the Allen Lazards and the Amari Coopers and the, nobody, because Calvin Austin's that guy.
I have like two sort of columns I'm putting in potential targets for the second wide receiver position in Pittsburgh. The one is trade targets, and Chris Olave is definitely number one in terms of realistic options. And I couch that all with I place this caveat on all of the trade options that I feel less and less likely with each passing day that another trade for a wide receiver is going to happen. And then I have this other column of free agent wide receiver targets that I feel like in general are much more likely. So someone like an Amari Cooper or something like that, probably in my mind still right now a free agent like an Amari Cooper, not saying him specifically, but a veteran sort of along those lines, meeting that description is the most likely option to come in for the Steelers. I would have, so that would put him like, I don't know, like maybe like third, fourth, fifth in that. Yeah. I don't think a trade's going to happen right now. I don't feel convinced of that today.
Do you think that a trade could happen at what point in the offseason does it become more realistic to you? Like, what point in the offseason do we get to a place where you're going, maybe I'm going to start thinking about a trade here and the Steelers actually pulling this off?
I think, and this might sound obvious, but once the quarterback position is resolved one way or the other, if there is a definitive day where, Mason Rudolph is the starting quarterback for the 2025 season, then it's like, okay, well, maybe it makes the most sense to get another weapon for Mason Rudolph. But I think they need to know who's going to be under center first, and then you can kind of go from there. So maybe in like a month, maybe.
Maybe in a month when Aaron Rodgers finally decides to answer, the Steelers could start thinking about their wide receiver position and just say, all right, well, there's checkbox one. Let's see what the other roster looks like. The rest of the roster looks like with the 11 days we have before training camp. That sounds great. That's so brutal.
Do you think that the more likely conversation, like what's being weighed in the Steelers front office, is not, trade free agent or trade waiting for the domino of the quarterback to fall, but is it worth allocating any more future assets to try and improve the roster for 2025? Is that worth our time at this point? Or is it just, I know Omar Khan is probably like the best at like testing the market, making those calls, doing due diligence, but is the debate like, oh, we need to know if Rodgers is coming, then we can keep negotiating for the trade market? Or is it like, do we even think it's worth our time to be doing this in 2025?
I look at it and say the Pittsburgh Steelers should be looking for a wide receiver. If it's the right wide receiver, they should be looking for a wide receiver either. You don't sign Aaron Rodgers and say, all right, well, We don't really need another wide receiver right now. We don't need a great team around him. We just, like, no. At that point, roll with Mason Rudolph, accept 7 wins, 6 wins, 5 wins, and be cool with it. If that's what it is if you're tank mode, don't go get a wide receiver. But the Steelers are not in tank mode. They're going after a 4-time MVP that they are literally trying to convince and beg on their knees for him to leave Malibu and come to Pittsburgh in the middle of the spring to do something he hasn't done in 10 years, to say, come on, dude, just 1 OTA practice, please. Minicamp, this is 3 days. We'll fly you out here. We'll pay for the flights, get you a nice hotel room. It'll be fine. Like, at that point, you're saying, okay, we're looking to win. And if you're looking to win, you go get a guy. The only way you trade for a wide receiver in my eyes is if you get a guy that fits the bill now and later. And Chris Olave fits the bill now and later, because it's not about what you do this year. You're going to try this year, but if it makes sense next year as well, then it makes sense. Because if it makes sense next year to say, here's another weapon for the rookie that's going to start, awesome. That's where I stand with it. Is I'm okay with adding assets right now, as long as they're, like, the Steelers again walk this weird line right now of like now and later. And I don't care about now, as long as it's good for later. And I think Chris Olave does that. And I don't think that you'd have to walk that line again, but I don't think you'd give up enough to say, oh, we just hurt ourselves moving forward. I think they'd be in a pretty good spot, to be honest, if they were to give up a 2nd-round pick and say, all right, Chris Olave, here you go. Sounds good. Obviously, health concerns, a lot of concussions, but if everything else works out, pretty good. Pretty good. All right, let's pivot here as we keep it trucking. I got to ask you, I don't know how often you listen to former players and sit there and get real engaged and go, that guy's got a point, man. That guy has got a great point. I don't know how many times you've heard the conversation of Mike Tomlin leaving the Pittsburgh Steelers, or the Steelers needing to move on, or Mike Tomlin being the guy that should leave Pittsburgh because he wants out of Pittsburgh. I still remember my first year on the beat. Somebody from Washington flew up to Pittsburgh, which is insane, and sat in a Mike Tomlin Tuesday press conference until the very last question and said, Mike, any response on the rumors of you being traded to the Washington Commanders? Or at the time it was the Washington football team. And Mike just said no and left. And I looked at the guy and said, you just spent a flight ticket to get here, pal. Whether it was you or your company or somebody is paying for a hotel room tonight for you to write no in a story. I could have just guessed that. You could have texted somebody and said, ask this question. It's totally fine. We hear it all the time. Sometimes it's flew to Pittsburgh.
Can't get over
sat
that.
right in front of me. And unless he drove, which would have been even crazier, but he sat right in front of me. And the whole time I kept thinking, you psychopath, you psychopath. What are you doing? Well, Ryan Clark had his thoughts on this. And maybe sometimes you listen to a former Super Bowl champion when you're talking about his head coach. I have no idea. I don't. But he said this on ESPN talking about the Steelers' schedule, which is, of all things, such a wild debate to bring this up in. He said, quote, I believe Mike Tomlin should coach in another organization. Mike Tomlin should be the fresh voice somewhere else. I believe as great as a head coach as he is, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I believe his voice has run stale there. I believe he's allowed that team to reach the highest of heights they are going to reach unless they get a top tier quarterback. Here's my thoughts on that real fast, and then I'll ask you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anybody who's sitting around saying Mike Tomlin is going to do a better job without a top tier quarterback than with a top tier quarterback. And if you are sitting around saying these things, you're wrong. You're blatantly wrong. And you know you're wrong in your heart of hearts. You know you're wrong. I just don't get the argument of this is as good as the Steelers are going to get playoff team without a Super Bowl caliber quarterback which is what you need in the NFL to win a Super Bowl. But Ryan Clark thinks that, well, because they don't have one right now, Tomlin's got to get out of there. And don't get me wrong, Tomlin would have a job in a minute, and there are a lot of people that would love for Mike Tomlin to leave. I get it. I hear it. I understand it. He's not going anywhere. And when it comes to the quarterback argument, I just don't understand how no one is. I take that back. How Ryan Clark is not viewing this, saying, all right, the clock is starting to tick, but the timer doesn't start until the next quarterback's in play. And until then, there's really nothing to talk about, right?
Yes, I am glad you said it, because I do not understand the argument either of how can the coach have exhausted all of his options, reached the end of his rope in this specific role, but then immediately give the reason in the next clause of the same sentence as to what would make the coaching performance better, and it is an independent factor of the coach. And criticisms of Tomlin's game management, certain aspects of the things within, game management is the first one that comes to mind, but like certain things that you want to criticize him for week to week, sure. I'm not sure how he is a worse coach for not having a franchise quarterback there. That I'm missing something. I really do respect Ryan Clark. I do enjoy listening to him as an analyst of the game post football, but I feel like I'm totally missing something here as to why that makes sense for Ryan Clark. I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
I agree. What is the argument here? That if you don't get a franchise quarterback, you can't win a Super Bowl? No, really. Yeah. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that in today's day and age, when Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are running around throwing footballs all over the place, that you as a franchise also need one of those to succeed? The point being, and stuff go ahead, you got thoughts?
Yeah, well, the other thing that feels relevant is the calling his messaging and his communication, whatever, stale. And my question I immediately have in my notes here is, to who? To the fans of the Steelers, sure. I imagine there is some staleness there and it feels like complacency, but I am struggling to, in this moment, or even thinking about it before we were on here, how many players who don't have certain specific needs, whether it's financial or character driven, flaws, let's call them. There's not a lot of players who sit there and say it was just the way that Tomlin was communicating with me and the way that he motivated us that just really, I tuned him out by week 6. I think that's the staleness and the messaging not being heard in the locker room, I think is a blown out of proportion criticism of Tomlin that happens from outside of the locker room. Because I don't really see that from what comes out of the locker room, at least from the core members of the team, and they're the ones who've been here the longest. So
I've never in a million years heard. I have 6 seasons of being in that locker room. I have never had one person tell me, yeah, dude, Mike T, man, just didn't get me fired. I've heard that Mike Tomlin on a Tuesday has people ready to run through a wall. You know what I mean? If I had $1 for every time somebody told me, if Mike Tomlin's speeches could just get out there, he would motivate every single person, I'd have at least a couple of bucks, it's ridiculous how many people are hyped. The players love him, man. That's what.
If anyone's been to St. Vincent's for training camp, and you just kind of you're in the bleachers, you can hear him pumping up the players. You can hear him going through, and you can see these players going through and just sort of getting pumped up by a coach in a way that, I'm not familiar with all other 31 franchises in the NFL, but it doesn't seem like this is a uniform thing that head coaches are able to get out of their players. Again, I criticize, the system, his form, decision-making, certain things, but I think it is really unfounded to say that he does not his message is getting stale with the locker room.
It is the furthest thing from stale, but shout out Ryan Clark, man. Shout out Ryan Clark. All right. Had to toss that one out there as we closed off today. That's everything on our agenda. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to start answering all your questions. With that said, start tossing them in the chat. We'll be right back.
Pittsburgh, this one's for you. From the voices behind all Steelers talk comes Black and Gold Apparel, your go-to for bold, fan-driven merch that reps the city, the Steelers, and everything in between. Whether you bleed black and gold or just love that Pittsburgh grit, we've got something for you. It's more than a podcast. It's a community. And thanks to your support, we're proud to bring the passion from our mics to your closets. Gear up, stand out, and show the world what real fans look like. Shop now at blackandgoldapparel.myshopify.com.
All righty. Shout out to our fans. Shout out to our super chatters. Shout out to our members. Can't appreciate you guys enough. And with that said, toss them in the chat. We're going to get to them, and we're going to start with good old Heath Miles gifting 5 all Steelers Talk memberships today. Shout out to all you guys. The call-in show yesterday was awesome. Appreciate you guys so much. As always, it was a good time. It was a good time. Sean, happy Friday, fellas. You got any plans for this weekend? Got any good plans?
No, just gonna hang out with my hot ass wife.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That sounds like a good time. Celebrating late Mother's Day tonight for the in-law. Pretty excited for that one, and then doing a lot of nothing. Nice. Yard's finally done, and the trip to New York was a successful one. So we're just gonna hang out. Yeah. Let's keep it trucking here. Miguel, I was calling for the Steelers to go after Olave when Justin Fields was still here. He might have stayed, and it would have been easier to get Olave interested. Do you think that if the Steelers wanted Chris Olave in February, Justin Fields is still in Pittsburgh along with Chris Olave today, if George Pickens trade happened in January?
Yes. If I'm following you correctly, I do think that logic tracks. Yeah, I get what Miguel's throwing out here, especially the OSU bond here. I think that definitely would have had an appeal. I still don't really think the Olave has ever been the number one target for the Steelers in terms of wide receivers. It seems like DK has been for like a year before they actually got him. So I don't think Olave has been as high of a target yet. But yeah, I would have loved to have seen a Justin Fields and Olave pairing in Pittsburgh. That would have been intriguing.
I agree. I don't think it changes. Like, the way I look at it is, it was management that Justin Fields was kind of peed off on, and it wasn't, oh man, I can't believe I get to throw the football to DK Metcalf and George Pickens. That's ridiculous. Like, no, that wasn't what the case was. He was pretty fired up. So I still think that he leaves. But I do think that that's an interesting argument to be made. And in some alternate universe, the Steelers do have Justin Fields and Chris Olave right now. And I don't know, better universe, maybe. Are the Steelers in a much significantly better spot if that's the case than they are today? And where they go from there, man, who knows? Do they draft Will Howard if they keep Justin Fields? Great question.
Yeah. Yes, because I think that does still fit in line with what they probably see him being, which is like a backup quarterback.
Okay. I love it. Eddie the First, 3 months as a member. Shout out to Eddie. So you weren't here. Eddie the First used to be Eddie the Great, and then he became our first ever member, and now he's Eddie the First. Stud.
All right, Eddie.
Legend in the building. Great stuff as usual, boys. Have a great weekend. Call-in show was still great. Need to work on the rambling, but we're getting there. We are getting there. We went through 18 calls in 55 minutes, and I felt like that was pretty impressive.
That's a lot of calls, dude.
A lot of calls. Which, don't get me wrong, guys. You guys want to call more, call. I loved every second of it, but 55 minutes, I felt like we were getting to a place where it was good. You know what I mean? We were creating space here, so it was good. Shout out to everybody. Shout out to Teddy the First for sure. Artisanal Bully Kennel. Do we have an answer from Howard on his Yinzer name? We don't. I never got it. I apologize. Artisanal Bully Kennel. I will look it. This is what I'm going to do. Okay. I got a pencil right here. I got a sticky pad right here. And I'm going to write Will Howard Yinzer name right on it. And I'm going to stick it right on my right on my board. That way I will never forget it. And the next time I am in the facility, which is next week, it's the first thing on my mind. So I apologize. I still like just a good old Will Howard. Will Howard.
Will
Good old
Howard.
Will Howard.
Kind of feels like car power if you say it that way. So
It's
I
the
like
same
that.
thing. It's the same thing. Got another one here. Are you Andrew Jackson or Benjamin Franklin confident that KJ will be rookie of the year? You seem to know this. So what is the joke here? I don't.
I think it's I'm assuming it's money denominations with the president. So 20 or 100.
That's so awesome. That's
clever,
so awesome.
clever phrasing there.
I would go 50%. Cam Ward, I think he's fighting from behind because of the roster that's around him.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Ashton Genty's got to have a good shot there. Any of the wide receivers have to have a good shot there. Omarion Hampton's in LA. He's going to get a shot. Caleb is fighting from behind for sure. Fighting from behind, I think. But a top 3, top 4, I would say rookie of the year candidate.
Yeah, I was gonna say top 5, so I'm not too far off. Yeah, I'd throw an Andrew Jackson on it. But I don't feel that confident that he's gonna be the offensive rookie of the year. But I think he's gonna challenge.
I agree. Ashton Genty would be number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2. I think Omarion Hampton's number 2. I would say, right? Like good opportunity in LA, great line. Number 3, I don't know who are the wide receivers that are getting. It's not going to be a quarterback. There's no chance.
You don't think there's any shot Cam Ward can?
Maybe.
If he goes like 25-20. Do you think they would just like give it to him still?
25 touchdowns, 20 interceptions.
Yeah.
No chance. No chance. No, everybody else would have to be terrible. I would say. Okay, we'll say 3rd. He's 3. We'll give him top 3 because he gotta. I don't know. Maybe like Tet McMillan is one. Emeka Ibuka is a name to watch. I think Caleb Johnson's like right in that little list there of like you just never know. Quinshon Judkins, Trey Henderson, all options. I don't know if they're. I'd say he's right in that mix. Right in that mix. Andrew Jackson for sure. For sure. Got another one here from Artisanal Bully Kennel. Shout out. Which of our rookies do you predict will have the most standout season this year and why? It is Caleb Johnson for me, but a very, very incredibly close number 2 is Derek Harmon because I think stuffing the run is going to be an absolute game changer for the Steelers defense. And we don't even know how good the Steelers defense could be until they get a real defensive line. And I think they've gotten one with Derek Harmon and Wyatt Black. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Derek Harmon's my number 1 for sure. I think Caleb Johnson's going to be excellent. I think it's just going to take some time for them to find the right sort of spot for him and how to get that pairing with Jaylen Warren going. But I think with Derek Harmon, they're just going to kind of like unleash him immediately. And I anticipate him being an impact player pretty quickly off the jump. So for those reasons, I think he's going to be the best rookie this year.
I agree. I'm a big Derek Harmon guy already. Been a big Derek Harmon guy. Cody Silva, do you remember the good old days when we used to blitz and the quarterback didn't know where it was coming from? So he would either get sacked or throw an interception. What happened to it? What happened to the good old days of the blitzing?
Dick LeBeau left?
Dick LeBeau left. That's the easiest answer you could put out there is you've lost the most creative, potentially one of the best defensive coordinators of all time in the entire sports history. And I think things, they shift when that kind of happens. And I look at, you don't have a blitzing corner right now. You don't have an option there. You have a blitzing safety in Deshaun Elliott and now Juan Thornhill. And I guess Minka, but you're not sending him. Mm-hmm. And until last year, I would say you didn't really have a group of elite edge rushers. Alex Highsmith is a run stuffer. TJ is a get to the guy, but like you didn't have the defensive line I think you needed or the inside linebackers. I think it could change, but I do think schematics wise, it's just Dick LeBeau, right? Like that's the answer.
Yeah, I think I think it is so hard to sort of accept the reality of like the genius that are some of these incredible coaches like a Dick LeBeau, like his ability to draw up defenses and get to the quarterback. It's not like it is easily replicated all the time throughout the NFL, and the Steelers are just like the one team who's missing out on how to do it since LeBeau left. Like, it's just not happening except for like these spare few elite edge rushers and teams and stuff like that. Like, it's not the norm to be doing this. The Steelers were just so above the norm for so long in this one specific defensive front that now it's just like hard to even realize that, like, getting after, like, they've been a pretty decent turnover team. You know, if you look at them over the last 5 years, if you look at their sack numbers over the last 5 years, like, they've gotten to the quarterback decently well relative to the rest of the league, but it doesn't feel dominant. It doesn't feel Super Bowl worthy. And I think that is just the difference of a Hall of Fame legendary coach like a Dick LeBeau who drew it up better than anybody could.
I agree. Shout out Carl Spackler, gifted 1 All Steelers Talk membership. And look at dude, claim it, because the Steelers, they can't claim the quarterback. Let's just tie it back to good old Cody Silva here. Keep it trucking. Egyptian Roughneck, shout out to Smooty Booty, man. We miss you. Need all hail Smooty Booty towel. Oh, and please help wish Grandpa happy birthday. Lifelong Steelers fan, is 97 today. Shout out. Happy birthday, Gramps here. That's awesome. 97 is crazy. I just filled out my life expectancy thing, and the guy asked, he was like, what are you thinking? And I was like, I don't know, dude. Like, what do people live to? And he said, not old. I said, awesome. That's great. Wasn't 97. I'll say that. Shout out to Gramps. Happy birthday, man. That's incredible. Smooty Booty, I can't even tell you how proud we are, how excited we are to hear from you. If you are listening to this, you don't know Smooty Booty, but was on here for a long time, and he's headed to Navy boot camp. He's in Navy boot camp.
Shout out.
Yeah. Shout out Smooty Booty. Shout out to Gramps, dude. 97. That's so crazy. That's 97 and wants a shout out from me and you is wild in my eyes. You know what I'm saying? Like, wild. That's
tell Gramps to give me a shout out.
That's what I'm saying, dude. Like, I look at it as such a, you're like such a legend. You know, Gramps is the legend. I'm blessed to now through this comment know Gramps. Shout out. Mike Lang, Jacob, who else is on your potential draft list? How do you guys feel about Jalen Waddle? Noah, do you see why I watch you over First Take now? That must have been where Clark was. That's hilarious. I don't watch First Take either, though. So shout out Ryan Clark, man. He'll be that's the best part. I was telling you before we got on, is like the best part is he will be in Pittsburgh during training camp at some point, and it'll be so much love and like Tomlin's the greatest, don't ever get rid of him, blah blah blah. But then you'll say these things on ESPN and you're just like, come on, man, like take the media cap off and let's get real here. Let's get real. All right, who else is on your potential draft list, and how do you feel about Jalen Waddle?
I would be fine with Jalen Waddle. I don't have a ton of feelings one way or the other about him. It feels like an upgrade. Who else on my potential draft list for 26? Or
I would say 26. Yeah.
And
it's early.
I was just watching some tape the other day of Lenora Sellers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's exciting, you know, talking quarterbacks, but I don't have like a full list of ideas yet.
Do you have a favorite in the draft next year outside of Arch Manning?
No, not yet. I think it's way too early to tell. I think everyone feels like really exciting right now.
Okay.
I'd be down with Jalen Waddle. I like that speed, though, is the number one thing coming to mind when I'm thinking of running through him in my head at this moment. So yeah, it could be a nice compliment to DK, but probably looking at the same sort of like trade package to get him, if not more.
Yes.
So
yeah, would you go Jalen Waddle over Chris Olave, or vice versa?
Oh man, I don't feel confident one way. They both feel like not coin tosses, but it feels like you're getting a good receiver, but there's injury concerns, history, you know, not sure how long and how much of a commitment I'd be willing to go once their rookie deal actually ends.
Yeah, I'm not a Jalen Waddle guy. I've made that very known, just because of the injury concerns. Like one of my real good buddies is a Dolphins fan. I don't watch much Dolphins football because on Sundays, like you, I'm watching Steelers games. And every single Sunday, it feels like in the group chat, I'm getting, he's out again, injured again. And I just take that as, all right, well, injury prone is a real thing in the NFL. That's concerning. Chris Olave's, he's had a couple of concussions. It's concerning, but I just don't, I think I'd go him over Jalen. I think Jalen Waddle is fantastic. I just don't know if I would go him over Olave if I was taking those two. Artisanal Bully Kennel once again. Thoughts on Garrett Warren? You already know I love my Samoans, especially at 6'6". I don't actually know.
He's the lineman
that they just roster? Picked up out of camp. I agree. Look at dude. I'm all about anybody who is big, scary, and on the offensive line. And if that's who this guy is, I'm all about it. I need to see a picture.
Most of my love for Samoans and my knowledge of them is mostly through WWE. But so that's, a little limited here in how it applies to the NFL and the Steelers, but
that's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine. Oh, I will say that I did see this guy practice, and he is a massive and scary looking human being. And that is always exciting. Always exciting. The offensive line for the Pittsburgh Steelers needs to be improved. The depth, they have the starters. I don't feel good about anybody outside of Spencer Anderson and Ryan McCollum on the backups here. And Max Sharping doesn't have a spot in my heart yet. Calvin Anderson doesn't have a spot in my heart yet. Adding guys, I'm all about. I think right now is very important for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Stephen Cornfield here. Is it possible to poach Marvin Harrison Jr. from the Arizona Cardinals? No, definitely a strong no. I think we could get Donnie Drew on here. He'd tell us no in 2 seconds. But I mean, we could have fun with it. Would you give up a first round pick for Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd give up a lot for Marvin Harrison Jr.
Wow.
I'm a big fan. I don't think there's any real chance, Stephen Cornfield, that we could poach him from the Cards. I think they really do think they got something with Kyler Murray still, so they're trying their best. But yeah, I think it would be impossible to get him here. I would give up a first. I would give up, like, if Omar Khan's making the deal today, I would give up a first and I would give up a third easily.
Okay. I would not. I don't think. I think to me, like a wide receiver in my eyes is replaceable, and you can find it. And at that point, you gotta look at Marvin Harrison Jr. is fantastic, but like, if you're giving up a first round pick, go trade for a quarterback. Go give something away that you feel good about. I just don't know. I don't know if that would be mine. Mike Lang here meant his trade list instead of the 2026 draft list. Who else is on your trade list?
Oh my goodness gracious. Wow. I would love the idea of Watson from Green Bay. I've said Romeo Doubs a ton of times on here, and we've talked about him a bunch. But I do think, just in terms of fit, he's probably the next one besides Olave that I think would actually work as a number 2 wide receiver. Beyond that, someone that I was a fan of, a couple people that are coming to me here that I was fans of sort of like last year were KJ Osborne and Jacoby Meyer. And I'm wondering just like where, I don't know what's going on with either of them at the moment, but like I would think they might be worth kicking buckets. They're, kicking the bucket on and seeing if there's anything going on. I don't know where
KJ Osborne is. Jacoby Meyer is still in Vegas and they like him, but I don't know who. I don't think Geno Smith gives you a Super Bowl, so maybe you start just selling house and saying, all right, sounds good. I like Jacoby Meyer. Jacoby Meyer was a name last year I liked a lot. KJ Osborne was a name I liked as well. He had a weird year, tweeted some weird stuff at some point, I think, and that never helps the situation.
New England before? Is that
no? He was in New England last year. He was in Minnesota before that.
That's
where he was good. Yeah. That's where he was good. But yeah, he would be on my list for sure. Jacoby would be on my list for sure. Dobbs is on my list. Christian Watson to me is maybe you're taking a flyer, but if he's cheap, cool. Cool. Juan Jennings out of San Francisco. What do you think of him?
Ooh, could they revisit with San Francisco and finally make something happen?
Yes.
That excites me a lot. I think I'd be stuck probably on like a third round pick though. I'd be stuck on like the George Pickens sort of comparison in terms of value. But that'd be a big ad. Do you like him? You like Juwan Jennings?
I'm a big Juwan Jennings guy. Big Juwan Jennings guy. Physical, speedy, has incredible hands. Fell off, like had one like decent year and then has done almost nothing besides that. But I like the upside and I like his youth, and I think he could fit well with the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, Egyptian Roughneck here. Graham says, Noah, I was there at the 1971 Super Bowl. Do you think we can win number 7? I like that Will guy. Gramps, I hope so, man. I hope so. First off, that's incredible. I hope that you get to see that. I hope we all get to see another one. I shouldn't even say you. I want to see another one at some point in my life. It would be awesome. It's been 20 years since we've all gotten to see almost 20 years since we've all gotten to see
too long
a Super Bowl. Would be fantastic. I hope the Will guy's good. He's a very nice human. I'll tell you that. He's a very nice guy. Shook his hand, said, Will, great to meet you. He turned around, said, no, great to meet you. Said, thanks. Then we left. That was it. Good guy. I'm rooting for him physically, man. The traits, I don't know if they're there, but I hope that he is able to develop into what the Steelers need him to develop into. Heath Miles, another podcast advertised Mason's last 6 games with the Steelers pretty okay and no drama. Just saying. Great show. Shout out to a member for 3 months. Crazy. Mason Rudolph, man. I don't know. He's not going 0-6, but like, what's your record with Mason Rudolph? Like, we went through yesterday. You won 10 games with Aaron Rodgers. You winning the same amount of games with Mason Rudolph?
Possibly, yes, but I think my initial rundown was having them go 8-9 if Mason Rudolph played all 17 games.
Okay.
But yeah, I totally get what Heath is saying there. Like, the 6 games he started, you look at him compared to what Justin Fields did in the 6 games he started, like, you're not seeing huge glaring differences. And one of those people, we were very excited about the possibility of maybe being QB1 in 2025. And the other one, we all kind of like pucker at. So,
yes.
Yeah, maybe Heath's onto something here. I don't know. I'm going to go to the well and do some meditating this weekend, and maybe I'll come out of it being more of a Mason Rudolph believer and that he will be the QB1. But for now, I'm just so not in that boat yet and believing it.
I need 2 weeks. I need to be able to get on the field, see these guys at OTAs, and then go, all right, I haven't seen Mason in a year. This is how he looks, because judging a year ago on a 6-game stretch is not what I'm looking to do. Doesn't give me good confidence in a guy. I want to see him in the field in 2 weeks. That's what I'm hoping for. Almost all-star. Assume that 9-8 is not enough to make the playoffs. The Steelers are sitting at 7-7. Do they go all out to be 10-7, or do they start Howard and other rookies the last 3 games? They go all out to win those 3 games without question. It goes back to the Heath question here about the last 6 games with Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph doesn't bench first-round pick Kenny Pickett if the Steelers aren't all in on making the playoffs. They would have that same mindset, unless it was Aaron Rodgers' fault that there is no change at quarterback and there will be no Will Howard until the Steelers are mathematically eliminated and the season is over, right?
Yes, I think that is most likely the case, barring injury or just the worst performance possible from Mason or Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, the Steelers just won't do that. It might be what we're all clamoring for at that point, especially if they are 7-7. But no, they would never. They don't never lay on their back and die in that regard. They'd keep fighting to go 9-8.
I agree every single time. Stephen Cornfield, Noah, how did you hide your hand for your wife from 2 days? I didn't. This is plain and simple. I don't leave the house to go to work during the off season, very rarely. So if they're at the facility, great. But if not, me and Jake are just sitting at home. So, I could you come home. All I got to do is say, I haven't even showered today. Things are fine. So we're, not putting on jewelry. Are you a guy do you like shower in your ring? You do everything in your ring. You sleep in your ring.
Yeah, I do everything in my ring.
Everybody
If I
tells
take
me
it off,
that,
I
dude.
lose it.
That's what I'm saying. I have to, though. I hate this thing. I hate it with everything. When I go to write, I put it on a different finger because it weighs this finger down and I hit the button too many times. And it's just awful. It's awful. I can't do it. I can't. I wasn't made to have a ring, but we have one and I'm happy for it. And one day it'll just be like nothing. One day
You'll
it'll
get
be
used to
like
it
nothing.
eventually.
Lindsay, if we are trading and paying some big name money, why not pay George Pickens? Makes no sense. This is a good question. They traded George Pickens, didn't give him the money, but would be willing to do it to somebody else because George Pickens caused a lot of issues. George Pickens had a lot of off the field issues. George Pickens was not dedicated to the Pittsburgh Steelers the way that they'd like somebody to be dedicated to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that, in a very long-winded way, summarizes that attitude issues, character concerns played a role, and the Steelers decided it's best to just move on.
Yeah.
William here. Also, when is the keeping it trucking March dropping? That's awesome and added to the list for sure. For sure. He's got another one here. Do you think Rock Taylor makes the team? I might ask you this. Your percent chance 1 to 10 Rock Taylor making the roster where we stand today.
Ooh, 3 today before any sort of, team activities are happening aside from rookie camp. And once that happens, probably a 1. I think I'd call a 9 or something is like that he finds a spot on the practice squad, unless another organization really is as intrigued with him as we all are right now. But yeah, I think he's going to be a fun watch. I think he's going to make some fun plays, get some looks in preseason, but I don't see him being one of the final 5 or 6 receivers on the 53 man.
Yeah, I agree. Big news here on the NFL front. Brock Purdy just signed a 5-year, $265 million contract with the San Francisco 49ers. Shuts down a lot of Purdy talk for the Pittsburgh Steelers, huh? Shuts down a lot of Brock Purdy talk and conversation consideration. I'll say this. I was told, and I don't know how, I never followed it up, but I was told that the San Francisco 49ers called the Tennessee Titans on draft week and said, yo, we'll give you Brock Purdy for the number 1 pick in the draft. Yeah. Come a long way. Come a long, long way. All right.
$181 million guaranteed on that deal.
Guy made $500,000 last year. Shout out Brock Purdy, man. Shout out. Go buy a car, dude. Go get a nice house, buy your mom a nice piece of jewelry, something. So donate a couple of All Steelers Talk memberships, whatever you got to do. Whatever you got to do. Chris, does Arthur Smith's offense rely on fullbacks or running quarterbacks? I think he would prefer running quarterback. Obviously would prefer a fullback. I think every offensive coordinator wants a fullback. I don't think it's necessarily dependent on them, but I do think that it's helpful. It's helpful. I would guess DJ Thomas Jones is the guy to win the fullback job today. That could change, but $30,000 shows a lot of investment in a guy that you don't do that for. So I would like it, but I don't think it relies too much on either of those, unless you're different.
No, agreed. Yeah, it doesn't rely on them. Relies on a quarterback that can see over linemen.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. Carl Spackler, we need a shirt to raise money for Derek's charity. Picture of the lineman, and it says "Together in Harmony" in honor of his mom. That would be awesome. Does Derek Harmon have a charity? Did I miss out on this?
The same question. Does he have one for?
We're gonna have to look it up here, because Derek Harmon charity. Because if he does, that would be awesome. I'm not seeing anything straight up, but we'll look into it. That would be sick. That would be sick. Would love to tag team with Derek on something. I think that would be super cool. Super cool. Rex 7, I called Olave. You did. There was a couple of people in the comments that were talking Chris Olave here. Will he get him? Will they get him? I mean, only time will tell, right? We'll see where these go. I would imagine that, again, OTA's minicamp changes a lot of things for the Pittsburgh Steelers and how aggressive they are. And at the same time, how confident other guys. All the Saints need to do, the Steelers need to see Calvin Austin look good and Roman Wilson not look good, and the Saints need to see Tyler Shuck throw past 7 yards over Chris Olave's head for both sides to be on the phone and say, all right, let's just make this happen. So the next 2 weeks will tell so much for both sides of this story. SmackDown, do you see them trading Highsmith mid-season if Jack Sawyer shows promise maybe for a wide receiver? Any chance that Alex Highsmith gets sent elsewhere during the season?
No, I would have that about a 0% chance, unfortunately. I love the thought. I think, in terms of players on the roster that could be expendable while also holding a decent trade value, Highsmith is probably the guy. But yeah, I don't think you would do that much, and you would be putting a ton of trust in a rookie Jack Sawyer to continue the promise that he hypothetically shows to start the season in 2025. So I don't see that happening this year. If he balls out next year, sure, I see that as a very real possibility, because they'll have just too many cooks in the kitchen. But not right now.
I agree. Let's keep it trucking here. American Steel, what would Yins need to see Will Howard do to get behind him as our guy? I mean, I think he would have to be like literally flawless in training camp. That's what I would need to see, because Will Howard's got a decent arm. He's got decent IQ. He's got good IQ. He's got decent mobility. Like, he's got it all. It's just nothing elite. But Will Howard didn't have good anticipation in college. He struggled making like the crazy wild throws because his anticipation was slow. That's the stuff that worries me. I would need to see Will Howard like playing at an elite level for me to be like, oh, okay, this guy's more than a 6th round pick. Let's see that. And I still think a 6th round pick as a rookie starter is just asking for some serious trouble.
Yeah, I was going to say, hypothetically, week 1 of the preseason against Jacksonville, or, pick a preseason game. Will Howard goes out there, plays the bulk of the snaps at quarterback, completes 75% of them. Steelers Nation is abuzz. Does Noah Strackbine actually sit in that chair and say, yeah, now he's my guy based off of that? I feel like you would need a ton more than that.
I agree. I'd have to see so much from this guy. He's fighting from so far back that he's got so much ground to make up. And I just have to see him make it up. I would have to see him make it up. Ricky, when do you anticipate Cordero Patterson getting cut? Surely we don't waste the roster spot on him. I don't know. Where we sit here today, I don't have any idea when Cordero Patterson's going. If I had to guess, July. If I had to guess, it's after OTAs and minicamp. That's when I would guess he goes elsewhere.
Is there a signing bonus anywhere, or like a roster bonus? I was going to say
I think post June 1st, it affects the cap differently and more beneficial to the Steelers. So I would imagine that's the one. What out of town game are you planning on going to this year? I'd go to the Chargers game. So going to Ireland, obviously that's super exciting, super pumped for it. Going to Chicago because Aaron Rodgers owns the city of Chicago, and also Chicago to me is like the place I'd always wanted to visit and see Soldier Field. So Soldier Field's a huge one to me. Probably going to make it to Boston, but I'm not 100% on that one yet because of the travel to Ireland. But those are the ones, and then obviously all the AFC North games. So those are the ones. MetLife, potentially. My wife's trying to talk me into like that's a New York trip, and I'm like, it's Jersey, pal. Like, it's not a New York trip. We're nowhere close. So those would be Chicago's my main one, Ireland's my main one, Boston's a possibility depending on travel. Carl Spackler, fun one Friday. Keep trade cut. Alan Saunders name introduction. Chris Carter's fast talking ability. Kaboli's ability to eat on camera. Without question, we know who we're keeping. Without question, we know who we're keeping. Kaboli's ability to eat on camera.
I was going to say, please don't make me look like a fool by saying Kaboli's.
Without question. Without question.
He's
absolute
the best, man.
stud. I mean, I don't even, to be honest with you, Kaboli could be the keep in the trade and the cut. I don't really care. I don't care about the other two. Shout out Chris and Allen, my guys. I would go Kaboli all day. Allen is probably the name introduction's good. Chris Carter's fast talking ability, though. Do you watch Locked On? Because it is
Not as much as I should.
crazy. Dude, it is crazy how fast my boy talks. Crazy. All right, we'll finish it with this one. Adam Noah, keep, trade, cut Broderick Jones, Calvin Austin, Jaylen Warren. I'll let you kick this one off to end the show.
Wow. I would keep Broderick. I would trade Calvin, and I would cut Jaylen Warren. And
cut Jaylen Warren. What?
I would. I have a lot of confidence in Caleb Johnson being able to take over, the number one responsibilities if Jaylen Warren wasn't around. I'm not advocating for them to do this. No, I want to be very clear. But of those three, I think you have the next ready replacement on the roster in Caleb Johnson compared to, if you full on cut Calvin, then it's just you got to let Rome cook. And that's, not good. And then
not good.
I think Broderick, you just have so much. We talked about him the other day. He has so much potential. I wouldn't want to give up on him at the tackle, even if that doesn't work out this year. Maybe he's a guard. I think there's too much left, too much untapped potential left. Where are you at with this?
I hope you're right, dude. I hope you're right. I'm keeping Jaylen. I think he's a stud.
I
think he's a stud. I'm trading Broderick because I think you could get the most value for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm cutting Calvin Austin, which sucks because I like Calvin Austin more than I like any other human in the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room. And that is so difficult. I would have to go keep Jaylen, cut Broderick, or trade Broderick and Calvin. I hear where you're coming from. I do.
Mm-hmm.
I just, a two-headed monster at running back. I don't think we could be upset about that.
Fair.
I don't think we could be upset about it. All right. With that said, guys, we're heading out here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. With that said, it's a good one. Go enjoy a beautiful weekend in the Berg. Peace.